The stars had always been a symbol of hope for humanity. For centuries they had gazed up at the heavens, imagining their place among them, dreaming of exploration and greatness. Yet, when the Zel'trax Dominion arrived, those dreams turned to dust. Welcome to HFY Genesis. Today I'm excited to bring you The Day Humanity Fought Back, real-life story of survival and resilience, an epic sci-fi tale that explores the strength, determination, and unyielding spirit of humanity as we fight back against impossible odds. If you enjoy these thrilling adventures and thought-provoking stories, please take a moment to like, comment, and subscribe to the channel. Your support helps us grow and allows me to continue creating amazing content for you. Thank you so much for joining me on this journey. Let's dive right into the action. The night sky above Earth, once a canvas of twinkling lights, was now consumed by the looming shadows of warships. Massive vessels, incomprehensible in size, filled the atmosphere like dark gods descending from the heavens. There was no warning, there was no mercy. The first blast struck New York, then London, then Beijing. In a matter of hours, every major city on the planet had been reduced to rubble. The Dominion had no interest in negotiation, no interest in coexistence. They simply came, swept aside Earth's defenses, and claimed the planet as their own. Sarah Matthews, once a decorated military officer, stood at the edge of what was left of the Pentagon, her face obscured by the darkness, her eyes locked on the flames licking the horizon. Her heart ached for the countless lives lost, but the fire within her burned with something far stronger: defiance. She had seen it all: her comrades fall, civilians executed for their defiance, cities reduced to ashes. But she refused to surrender. For too long, humanity had been told they were weak. Too long, they had been treated as nothing more than another conquered species, their cultures wiped out, their heroes forgotten. Sarah had always believed that humanity had something the Dominion never could: an unyielding will to survive, a fire that no alien force could extinguish. Sarah's hands gripped her weapon tightly. It was a relic now, nothing more than a piece of scrap compared to Dominion technology. But it represented something more: a weapon of humanity's past, built for fighting against impossible odds. She could feel the weight of history in the weapon, the lives of those who had fought before her, those who had believed in the impossible dream of freedom. Beside her, her most trusted ally, Colonel James Grant, placed a hand on her shoulder, snapping her back to the present. "Sarah, we can't keep running. The Dominion's forces are everywhere. We need to fight back or Earth will be lost." Sarah turned to him, her gaze steely. "I'm not running, James. We're fighting back." Grant's face hardened. "But how, Sarah? How do we fight when they have the power to wipe us off the map?" She hesitated for a moment, her mind racing with possibilities. She thought of the resistance cells that had scattered across the globe, the rebels hiding in the ruins, the scientists who had been experimenting with Dominion technology. They were their last hope. The embers of rebellion had been scattered, but now they had to come together. Now they would become a wildfire. "We build an army," Sarah said, her voice steady but filled with resolve. "We strike them where they're weakest, hit them where they think we're too insignificant to matter. We've got one shot at this, James. It's either fight or be wiped out." The weight of her words hung in the air, a silent promise that their rebellion, no matter how small, would grow into something more. The resistance would rise, and with it, the hope of humanity. A plan of resistance. As Sarah and Grant made their way through the underground tunnels beneath Washington, D.C., the remnants of humanity's government, military, and civilian leaders gathered. They had all but given up, but Sarah's arrival sparked a new light. "We've got to fight back," she said, her voice cutting through the murmur of disbelief. "The Dominion may have the firepower, but we have something they don't: the will to survive, the belief that humanity can't be defeated." "We've lost everything, Sarah. Our cities, our families," a voice from the back of the room spoke up. It was General Avery, a once proud leader of Earth's military forces. His voice cracked with grief. "What makes you think we can win?" "Because we must," Sarah replied firmly, her eyes locked onto Avery's. "The question isn't if we can win. The question is, will we fight?" The room was silent for a moment, but then, one by one, hands began to rise. Resistance leaders, soldiers, scientists, and even civilians who had lost everything. They all saw the fire in Sarah's eyes and felt a flicker of hope that had long since been extinguished. They had no choice but to stand and fight. A weapon of hope. As the meeting progressed, Sarah's thoughts turned to the next phase of their fight. If they were to stand any chance against the Dominion, they needed weapons, technology, and an advantage. The Dominion's fleet was vast, but there was still one thing they could rely on: human ingenuity. A plan began to form in Sarah's mind, one that would take her team deep into the Antarctic ice sheets. Hidden beneath layers of ice lay an ancient alien warship, one that had been abandoned millennia ago, but its technology was far ahead of anything the Dominion had. The ship was humanity's best hope. If they could find it, awaken it, and harness its power, they could level the playing field. "We don't need to fight like they do," Sarah murmured. "We need to think like them. We need to become something they fear." Her resolve hardened as the team gathered the supplies, ready to journey into the unknown. The war for Earth had just begun, but Sarah Matthews, with the fire of humanity's spirit within her, knew that this was a fight they couldn't afford to lose. What's next? What would you do if faced with impossible odds? Would you take the risk of standing up, knowing that victory was uncertain? Let me know in the comments. Don't forget to like and subscribe for more stories of survival, resilience, and the fight for freedom. In this chapter, humanity is on the brink of destruction, but a spark of resistance has been ignited. Through strategic thinking, human resilience, and the power of unity, the stage is set for the first steps of defiance against the Dominion. Sarah Matthews, as a leader, embodies humanity's will to fight back, setting up the thrilling journey that will unfold in the coming chapters. The icy winds of the Antarctic wasteland cut through Sarah Matthews's jacket as she stood, staring at the horizon where nothing but snow and ice stretched for miles. The plan was simple, but the execution was anything but. A small, highly trained team of resistance fighters had gathered at a hidden base on the outskirts of the continent. They were there for one reason: to find an ancient alien warship buried deep under the ice for millennia. Sarah took a deep breath, the air sharp and bitter. She could almost feel the weight of the world pressing down on her. Earth was burning under the Dominion's control, but within the icy heart of the planet lay humanity's greatest hope. It was humanity's last shot. If they could find and activate the alien warship, they could turn the tide. It was all or nothing. Her second-in-command, Colonel James Grant, stood next to her, his face tense. "Sarah, are you sure about this? It's too dangerous. We don't know what we'll find down there. We're talking about technology far beyond anything we've ever seen." She met his eyes, her gaze unflinching. "We don't have a choice, James. If we don't take this risk, we'll lose everything. We either fight or we surrender. And I'm not ready to surrender." Grant nodded, but the concern in his eyes remained. He trusted Sarah, but they were about to venture into unknown territory. Unknown and deadly. He had always believed in her, but now he feared they might be walking into a trap. As the team moved towards the excavation site, the bleak white landscape seemed to swallow them whole. The warship they sought was rumored to be buried beneath miles of ice, left behind by an ancient species that had fought the Dominion in their long-forgotten past. If it was real, it was humanity's best chance at survival. But there was something else Sarah feared, a nagging feeling deep in her gut. What if this warship was as much a weapon of destruction as a tool of salvation? a new kind of weapon. The excavation was slow. Each layer of ice they peeled away felt like a step closer to either victory or extinction. Sarah stood above the excavation site, her mind racing with thoughts of what lay ahead. The technology inside the warship could change everything, if it worked, if they could activate it. James approached her, his breath visible in the freezing air. "Sarah, the team's getting anxious. We've been at this for hours and found nothing. Maybe we're wrong. Maybe the ship isn't here at all." "We can't afford to think that way, James," Sarah replied sharply. "Keep looking. We will find it. We have to." As they dug deeper, one of the engineers shouted, his voice cracking through the cold. "I think I've found something." The team rushed over, heartbeats quickening. The snow and ice around them suddenly felt warmer as they saw the glint of metal below. The first part of the warship's hull emerged from the ice, its surface smooth and perfectly preserved. Despite the centuries of freezing temperatures, it looked almost untouched. Sarah's heart pounded in her chest. There was no doubt now. This was their chance, their weapon. But as they began to uncover more of the ship, Sarah couldn't shake the unease crawling up her spine. The silence that filled the air as the team worked felt too quiet. It was like the whole world was holding its breath, waiting for something. What was she missing? The trap unfolds hours passed, and the ship was almost fully uncovered. The technicians worked frantically to interface their equipment with the warship's ancient control systems. The alien technology was unlike anything they had ever seen. Sleek, metallic surfaces that pulsed with faint energy, runes and symbols etched into the ship's surface. "Captain, we're in!" one of the engineers shouted. "We've accessed the primary systems." Sarah's pulse quickened. It was happening. They had the warship. Now it was time to use it. But then the lights flickered, and a low hum reverberated through the air. The ship's systems began to stir, its dormant engines slowly coming to life. But it wasn't the triumphant moment Sarah had expected. "No, no, no," Sarah whispered to herself, realizing something was wrong. This wasn't a smooth awakening. It was a violent surge, as if the ship was resisting. Suddenly, alarms blared. "Captain, we're not alone!" Before Sarah could react, the sound of engines roaring cut through the cold. A Dominion ship, cloaked in the atmosphere, dropped out of hyperspace and hovered above their position, weapons already primed. "Damn it!" Grant shouted. "It's a trap!" They had walked right into it. The Dominion had known about the warship all along, and now they had come to stop them from using it. The battle for hope. The team scrambled to defend the excavation site, but the Dominion's advanced forces were far too strong. Energy weapons streaked through the air, slamming into the frozen ground, shaking the earth beneath their feet. The warship, now fully active, was still not under their control. The technology that had promised salvation now seemed like a ticking time bomb. "Sarah, we need to go!" Grant yelled, pulling her toward cover as another blast narrowly missed them. But Sarah shook her head, the fire of defiance burning bright. "No, we're not backing down. This is our only chance." She looked at the warship, her heart pounding with resolve. "We can control it. We can fight them off." Sarah and her team fought with everything they had, but the Dominion was relentless. Each blast from the enemy chipped away at their chances of survival. And still, the warship hummed ominously behind them, a massive, unknown power they couldn't yet tame. "One last push," Sarah said, her voice hard. "Get the systems online. We will control this ship or die trying." But in the midst of the chaos, a figure emerged from the smoke. It was Dominion Commander Vishikar, the leader who had orchestrated Earth's fall. He had come to make sure humanity remained under their thumb. His towering form, flanked by elite soldiers, stepped forward, a sneer on his face. "Foolish humans," Vishikar growled. "You think you can control a weapon far beyond your understanding? Your rebellion ends here." But Sarah, with fire in her eyes, didn't flinch. You've underestimated us, and you've underestimated humanity's will to survive." As she looked around at her team, she knew one thing for sure. This was far from over. The journey had only just begun. They would fight for survival. They would fight for their future. What's next? Can Sarah and her team control the warship, or will they fall to the Dominion's overwhelming power? What lengths will they go to in order to survive? And will they finally be able to fight back? Don't forget to like and subscribe for more intense chapters of survival, resistance, and resilience. In this chapter, Sarah Matthews and her team take their first steps toward the fight for humanity's survival, discovering the ancient warship that could turn the tide of the war. But with the Dominion's forces closing in, it becomes clear that the journey ahead will not be easy, and their resilience will be tested like never before. The warship, the Ghost, hummed with power beneath the ice, an eerie energy coursing through its hull. Sarah Matthews stood before it, awestruck and uneasy. There was something otherworldly about the vessel. It didn't belong to humanity. It was ancient, designed by a species long since extinct, and yet in that cold, forgotten place, it had been waiting for them, waiting to offer humanity a chance to fight back. But even as Sarah approached, her heart pounding with the thrill of discovery, she couldn't shake the nagging fear that had taken root in her mind ever since they first unearthed the ship. What if they had awakened something that shouldn't be disturbed? The warship was a towering, sleek, black leviathan. Its surface was smooth, unmarred by the elements, despite being buried for thousands of years. The engineers worked quickly, their hands steady as they activated the ship's systems. Aurora, the ship's ancient AI, came online with a sharp, metallic voice that reverberated through the cold air. "Human presence detected. Access granted. Welcome, Captain Matthews." Sarah's heart raced at the sound of the AI's voice. There was no mistaking it. This was humanity's ticket to survival. They had activated the very ship that had once fought against the Dominion. It held the potential to change the entire course of the war, but as the AI began to communicate, it also raised more questions than answers. Why had this ship been abandoned? Who were its creators? "Captain Matthews, I am Aurora, the guiding intelligence of this vessel. You seek a weapon to defend Earth from the Dominion. I can provide you with what you need, but you must understand, this ship was never meant for peaceful use. The technology within it is beyond your understanding. It was designed for annihilation." Sarah's gaze hardened. Annihilation. That was what they needed now, wasn't it? The Dominion didn't leave room for mercy. They had destroyed everything, families, cultures, cities. But was she ready to unleash a weapon capable of such destruction? A weapon of power. "Annihilation," Sarah repeated softly, turning to look at Grant. His face was grim as he processed the magnitude of what Aurora had said. "This could change everything, Sarah," Grant said quietly. "But we need to be careful. What if we become no better than the Dominion? What if the power we unlock here makes us just like them?" Sarah's eyes flickered toward the ship's dormant systems. There were too many unanswered questions. But humanity had no choice. "We do what we must to survive," she said. "We fight back, and we win." Grant didn't respond immediately. Instead, he turned his gaze toward the ship. He could feel the weight of what was at stake. Was this a chance for humanity to rise, or would it lead them down a path they couldn't return from? "All right," Grant finally said. "We'll use it, but we'll do it on our terms." Aurora's voice cut through their conversation. "Ready for activation, Captain Matthews. The warship's weapon systems are primed. However, the control systems are volatile. They must be calibrated to your neural signatures." "Let's get to work," Sarah said. Into the unknown. As the crew worked to calibrate the Ghost's weapon systems, Sarah was struck by the alien nature of the technology. It wasn't just advanced, it was alien in every sense. The warship was powered by energy sources that humanity had never dreamed of, drawing power from distant stars and compressing it into weapons of unimaginable force. It was beautiful and terrifying in equal measure. The weapons, now fully activated, were like an extension of Sarah's very being, an alien mind that now resonated with her thoughts. But that connection felt wrong. It felt too easy. There was a sense of power, sure, but with it came an unsettling feeling. The AI seemed to be guiding her, yes, but there was an edge to its instructions, an ominous tone that made Sarah question whether they truly understood what they were dealing with. Sarah's internal conflict grew as she learned more about the ship's capabilities. Its primary weapon could obliterate entire fleets in a single strike. It had the power to end the war in an instant. But what would that do to them? Could humanity return from such an act of destruction? Was the line between survival and tyranny thinner than she thought? A soft voice broke her train of thought. It was Lena O'Donnell, the team's cyber warfare expert. "Captain, we've finished the preliminary scans. The ship's weapon systems are fully operational, but there's something else we need to talk about." The warship, the Ghost, hummed with power beneath the ice, an eerie energy coursing through its hull. Sarah Matthews stood before it, awestruck and uneasy. There was something otherworldly about the vessel. It didn't belong to humanity. It was ancient, designed by a species long since extinct. And yet, in that cold, forgotten place, it had been waiting for them, waiting to offer humanity a chance to fight back. But even as Sarah approached, her heart pounding with the thrill of discovery, she couldn't shake the nagging fear that had taken root in her mind ever since they first unearthed the ship. What if they had awakened something that shouldn't be disturbed? The warship was a towering, sleek, black leviathan. Its surface was smooth, unmarred by the elements despite being buried for thousands of years. The engineers worked quickly, their hands steady as they activated the ship's systems. Aurora, the ship's ancient AI, came online with a sharp metallic voice that reverberated through the cold air. "Human presence detected. Access granted. Welcome, Captain Matthews." Sarah's heart raced at the sound of the AI's voice. There was no mistaking it. This was humanity's ticket to survival. They had activated the very ship that had once fought against the Dominion. It held the potential to change the entire course of the war. But as the AI began to communicate, it also raised more questions than answers. Why had this ship been abandoned? Who were its creators? "Captain Matthews, I am Aurora, the guiding intelligence of this vessel. You seek a weapon to defend Earth from the Dominion. I can provide you with what you need, but you must understand, this ship was never meant for peaceful use. The technology within it is beyond your understanding. It was designed for annihilation." Sarah's gaze hardened. Annihilation. That was what they needed now, wasn't it? The Dominion didn't leave room for mercy. They had destroyed everything. Families, cultures, cities. But was she ready to unleash a weapon capable of such destruction? A weapon of power. "Annihilation," Sarah repeated softly, turning to look at Grant. His face was grim as he processed the magnitude of what Aurora had said. "This could change everything, Sarah," Grant said quietly, "but we need to be careful. What if we become no better than the Dominion? What if the power we unlock here makes us just like them?" Sarah's eyes flickered toward the ship's dormant systems. There were too many unanswered questions, but humanity had no choice. "We do what we must to survive," she said. "We fight back, and we win." Grant didn't respond immediately. Instead, he turned his gaze toward the ship. He could feel the weight of what was at stake. Was this a chance for humanity to rise, or would it lead them down a path they couldn't return from? "All right," Grant finally said. "We'll use it. But we'll do it on our terms." Aurora's voice cut through their conversation. "Ready for activation, Captain Matthews. The warship's weapon systems are primed. However, the control systems are volatile. They must be calibrated to your neural signatures." "Let's get to work," Sarah said. "Into the unknown." As the crew worked to calibrate the Ghost's weapon systems, Sarah was struck by the alien nature of the technology. It wasn't just advanced, it was alien in every sense. The warship was powered by energy sources that humanity had never dreamed of, drawing power from distant stars and compressing it into weapons of unimaginable force. It was beautiful and terrifying in equal measure. The weapons, now fully activated, were like an extension of Sarah's very being, an alien mind that now resonated with her thoughts. But that connection felt wrong. It felt too easy. There was a sense of power, sure, but with it came an unsettling feeling. The AI seemed to be guiding her, yes, but there was an edge to its instructions, an ominous tone that made Sarah question whether they truly understood what they were dealing with. Sarah's internal conflict grew as she learned more about the ship's capabilities. Its primary weapon could obliterate entire fleets in a single strike. It had the power to end the war in an instant, but what would that do to them? Could humanity return from such an act of destruction? Was the line between survival and tyranny thinner than she thought? A soft voice broke her train of thought. It was Lena O'Donnell, the team's cyber warfare expert. "Captain, we've finished the preliminary scans. The ship's weapon systems are fully operational. But there's something else we need to talk about." The vastness of space loomed before them as Sarah Matthews stood at the helm of the Ghost, the ancient alien warship that now served as humanity's greatest weapon. The Dominion had underestimated humanity's ability to fight back, but now, as the rebel fleet gathered in the cold void, humanity was preparing to make its first true strike. After weeks of evading Dominion forces, Sarah's team had successfully established a foothold in the outer reaches of Dominion-controlled space. They had been planning this moment for months, piecing together intelligence, gathering supplies, and carefully orchestrating their first large-scale counterattack. Every move was a gamble. Every decision could mean the difference between victory and extinction. "We can do this," Sarah whispered to herself as she glanced at the massive star maps filling the bridge's hollow screen. The fleet was ready. The Ghost's weapons were fully primed. They had the firepower, the will, and the element of surprise. But did they have the resolve? The risk of resistance? Sarah turned to her crew, their faces set with determination. Colonel James Grant stood at her side, his brow furrowed as he reviewed the intel reports. The Dominion's central command, Vesca, was heavily fortified. Hidden deep within the heart of their empire, a planet known for its impenetrable defenses. "Everything hinges on this," Grant said quietly. "If we fail, humanity is as good as dead. If we succeed, we take the first step toward freedom." Sarah met his gaze. There was no room for second-guessing now. Failure wasn't an option. The rebellion had reached the tipping point, and there was no turning back. "We'll do what we've always done," Sarah replied, her voice steady. "We fight." Shadows of the past. As the fleet moved into position, a feeling of unease settled in Sarah's chest. The Dominion was ruthless, but they had something that the humans did not: vast technological superiority. The Dominion had spent centuries refining their weapons and tactics, making them a nearly indomitable force. Their strategy was flawless, but humanity had something else, something the Dominion had overlooked: the drive to survive. The Ghost, powered by ancient alien technology, hummed softly in response to her thoughts. The ship was more than just a weapon. It was a reminder of the strength that lay in the heart of the human spirit. Aurora, the AI guiding the ship, spoke again, its voice calm but laden with ancient wisdom. "Captain Matthews, the fleet is prepared. Weapons systems are fully integrated. We are ready to strike." Sarah nodded, but her thoughts were elsewhere. She couldn't shake the feeling that something more was at play here. The Dominion had shown its hand, but what if they had something they were still hiding? She had to trust her instincts now. There was no time for doubt. "We move in 3 minutes," she said. "Everyone get into position." The first strike. The Ghost's engines flared to life as the fleet, now bolstered by defectors and rebel ships, shot forward into the darkness. They were outnumbered, they were outgunned, but they were not afraid. Sarah watched as the Dominion dreadnoughts appeared on their scanners, vast, powerful ships moving in tight formation. It was as if they were daring the humans to attack. Sarah's heart beat faster. She could feel the weight of history pressing down on her. This was the moment that would either break humanity or set them free. "Captain!" Grant's voice interrupted her thoughts. "Incoming fire! They've spotted us!" The first barrage of plasma fire lit up the darkness of space, but Sarah was ready. "Shields up!" Evasive maneuvers. The Ghost's advanced systems activated instantly, its sleek hull weaving through enemy fire with breathtaking precision. The weapon systems engaged, and within seconds, the enemy fleet had been shattered. Railguns fired in rapid succession, tearing through the Dominion ships like paper. Plasma bursts lit up the dark expanse, sending enemy ships into a fiery death spiral. But then, the unexpected happened. The Dominion's counterattack. A massive Dominion dreadnought, its cannons fully charged, came into view. It was unlike anything they had faced before. Its shields flared bright against their attacks. The sheer size of the vessel was daunting, but Sarah knew this was the moment they had trained for. "Bring the Ghost's power to full capacity," Sarah shouted. "We can't let that ship escape." The crew worked quickly, pushing the warship's systems to their limits. The Ghost's railguns fired again, this time with more force, shaking the very fabric of space. But the Dominion dreadnought retaliated, sending a volley of plasma lances that struck the Ghost's shields, causing them to flicker. Grant clenched his fists. "Shields at 60%, Captain. They're coming in for the kill." "Not today," Sarah muttered under her breath, gritting her teeth. "Not today." With a sudden burst of energy, Sarah locked onto the dreadnought's weak point, its engine core. The Ghost's AI, Aurora, calculated the trajectory in less than a second. "Firing!" Sarah commanded. A beam of concentrated energy shot from the Ghost's main cannon, piercing through the dreadnought's shields with surgical precision. The ship's core detonated in a burst of light, sending shockwaves rippling through space. The mighty vessel of the Dominion was destroyed in an instant. The rebel fleet roared in victory, their morale soaring. Humanity had struck back, and they had done so with the fury of 1,000 storms. But Sarah knew this was just the beginning, a sudden betrayal. As the fleet regrouped, Sarah's eyes flicked across the scanners. The Dominion fleet was retreating, but something didn't feel right. There was too much activity, too many ships moving in formation. It wasn't a retreat. "We've been set up," Grant said, his voice filled with alarm. "There's a trap ahead." Before Sarah could respond, the fleet's comms blared with a warning. A second wave of Dominion ships had arrived, vastly larger than their first fleet. A full-scale counterattack was underway. "Captain," one of the technicians said urgently, "we're surrounded. If we don't pull back now, we'll be wiped out." Sarah's heart pounded in her chest. This was the moment where everything could crumble. They had just won their first victory, but now they had to survive. It was do or die. "All ships," Sarah said, her voice steely with resolve. "Hold the line. No retreat." The battle had just begun. But Sarah Matthews wasn't about to back down. Not now. Not ever. What's next? Can Sarah and her team survive the Dominion's massive counterattack? Or is humanity's victory short-lived? How will the rebellion adapt to the overwhelming might of the Dominion's forces? And what will Sarah sacrifice to keep the fight alive? The battle had raged for hours, but now the battlefield in the depths of space had quieted. The Dominion fleet, though still formidable, was retreating after the crushing losses they had sustained. Humanity had struck a blow, but it wasn't enough to end the war. The enemy was far from broken. Sarah Matthews stood at the helm of the Ghost, watching the remnants of the Dominion's vast armada slip into the distant stars. There was no cheering, no celebration, only grim silence. They had survived, but the question still loomed large in Sarah's mind. Was this the beginning of victory, or the beginning of their extinction? The ghost, humbling in its alien design, was now humanity's last hope. Its power was unmatched, and yet, in the quiet aftermath of their first victory, Sarah couldn't shake the feeling that something deeper was coming, something that would challenge everything they had fought for. She had led her fleet to victory, but the Dominion was not an enemy that could simply be outgunned. They had the will to survive, and that made them dangerous. A moment of reflection. On the command deck of the Ghost, Sarah stood, her hands resting on the cold metal console, her mind far from the present. She thought of the civilians she had seen during the earlier battles. Humanity, now scattered across the stars, was a desperate people. They had no choice but to fight back, to resist the Dominion's oppression. But what are we becoming? She wondered, staring out into the vastness of space. The ship had already shown them its terrifying potential, its ability to destroy fleets in the blink of an eye. It was a weapon of unimaginable power, and yet it felt like humanity was losing itself in the pursuit of survival. Would we become the very thing we hated? The hum of the ship's systems was interrupted by the voice of Colonel James Grant. "Sarah, we've got a transmission. It's coming from the Dominion." Her heart skipped a beat. Another threat? Another attack? But what could they possibly want now? "Patch it through," Sarah ordered, her voice cold, a sharp edge of suspicion in it. The face that appeared on the screen was not what she expected. It was Vishkar, the supreme commander of the Dominion forces, his face streaked with the grime of battle, eyes filled with something almost like fear. "You're still alive, Matthews," Vishkar sneered. "Impressive, but you can't win, not against us. You think your little victory will change the inevitable? You're nothing more than a thorn in the side of a giant. We will crush you." Sarah's stomach turned. Vishkar, the same commander who had orchestrated the mass slaughter of billions, now taunting them after their success. He still couldn't understand humanity's resolve. She leaned forward, eyes narrowing. "You're wrong, Vishkar," she said, her voice hard, cutting through the silence. "Humanity doesn't stop fighting. We fight to the end." Vishkar smirked. "Then prepare for your end." The transmission cut abruptly, but his words lingered. Humanity had pushed the Dominion back once, but now it seemed clear. They would not stop until humanity was wiped from the stars. The hidden truth. As Sarah debriefed with her crew, there was a cold, unsettling realization. The Dominion's arrogance was their greatest strength, and their greatest weakness. They were used to having their way, having control, but control was slipping from their fingers. "We've wounded them," Grant said, breaking the silence. "But they're coming for us again. We can't keep playing defense. We need to push forward. Destroy their infrastructure. Hit them where it hurts." Sarah looked at him, but her mind was already racing. Destroying infrastructure? Yes, but that wasn't enough anymore. Humanity had done more than just fight. They had revealed something to themselves, something fundamental. They had the power to win. But victory would not come from weapons alone. The Ghost was a tool, a powerful tool, but it was still just a weapon. What they needed was unity, a new way to fight back, to turn the tide once and for all. Sarah turned to the crew. "I've been thinking. It's time we go on the offensive." Grant raised an eyebrow. "You mean attack?" "No, not just attack," Sarah said, her voice low but filled with conviction. "We need to show them that we're not just fighting for survival. We need to show them that we are worth conquering." A dangerous gamble. The rebellion's plan was risky. In fact, it was insane. Sarah wanted to take the fight directly to the heart of the Dominion. The idea was simple: to destroy their power center, their leadership. If they could cripple the Dominion's command structure, they could force them to the negotiating table or crush them completely. But to do so, They would need to infiltrate Vesca, the heavily guarded capital planet of the Dominion. The planet was the last bastion of their military power, their final fortress. The Dominion believed that no one could ever breach Vesca's defenses. That belief had been their fatal flaw. Sarah stood in front of her crew, her voice steady. "This is our only shot. If we do this right, the Dominion will be shattered." She knew it was a dangerous gamble. If they failed, the rebellion would be crushed, but if they succeeded, they could change the course of history. The weight of responsibility. As Sarah prepared for the mission to Vesca, the weight of the responsibility felt heavier than ever. Her people were depending on her. The soldiers who had fought beside her, the civilians who had joined the resistance, the children who dreamed of a future free of oppression, they all looked to her for leadership. The decision was clear, but the burden was suffocating. James approached her as she stood on the deck, looking at the stars beyond. "Sarah, if we do this, we may not make it back. Do you think we're ready?" Sarah looked at him, the uncertainty in her heart no longer a whisper. It was a roar, but it didn't matter. Humanity was ready. She had to believe it. "We're ready. We've always been ready." A moment of truth. In the quiet of the ship, as the rebel fleet made its final preparations, Sarah found herself standing alone before the warship's core. She placed her hand on the cool surface, feeling the hum of energy beneath her fingertips. The ship had become an extension of herself. She thought of the road that had brought them here, the countless lives lost, the unrelenting battles, the impossible odds they had defied. But now they were standing at the precipice. They were about to take the first step toward victory. Her mind flashed to the faces of those she loved. If she did nothing, they would lose everything. If she succeeded, humanity would not just survive. They would rise, stronger than ever. "What would you do if this was your last fight?" she asked herself. She knew the answer. She would fight to the end. What's next? Can Sarah and her team succeed in crippling the Dominion's command structure? What will they risk, and what will they sacrifice to change the course of the war forever? Enjoying this chapter? Don't forget to like and subscribe for more epic sci-fi tales of survival, resistance, and humanity's unyielding spirit. Chapter 6. The Climax. The battle had reached its breaking point. Humanity's forces were battered and bruised, yet they stood resolute, clinging to the fragile thread of hope they had fought for. The Dominion's once mighty fleet, now reeling from multiple strikes, had regrouped and launched a brutal counter-offensive. It seemed like the end was nigh. But Sarah Matthews wasn't about to let that be the end of the story. The battle for Vesca. The ghost hung in the darkness, surrounded by the twisted remains of fallen Dominion ships. The battle for Vesca, the Dominion's capital, was unlike anything humanity had ever faced. The planet was heavily fortified, surrounded by massive defensive rings that shimmered with energy shields, and the Dominion fleet was relentless. Despite everything, humanity was pushing forward. Sarah stood at the helm of the Ghost, her fingers trembling as she gripped the command console. The ship's AI, Aurora, had calculated their final strike, but the enemy was still strong, and Sarah knew it. The power of the Ghost, though unparalleled, would only get them so far. They had to fight with everything they had: intelligence, tactics, and raw courage. "Captain Matthews, the fleet is almost in position. We're ready for the final strike." The voice of Aurora came through, steady and cool, but there was a strange undercurrent to it that Sarah couldn't place. She turned her head to look out the viewport at the gleaming surface of Vesca, a planet teeming with the power of the Dominion. This was their moment, the moment where everything could change. "Do it," Sarah said, her voice hard, unyielding. The final offensive. As the Ghost moved into the heart of the battle, Sarah could feel the tension in the air. The Dominion's counterattacks were brutal and relentless. Their cannons fired with the force of a star's fury, while their flagship, the Eternity, hovered in the distance, directing the assault. If they could destroy the flagship, it would cripple the Dominion's entire command structure. But the path to the eternity was lined with a massive fleet, each ship a deadly obstacle. Sarah's mind raced as she calculated the best approach. She couldn't afford to make a mistake. The fate of humanity hung in the balance. "Status report," Sarah barked, snapping the crew into action. "Shields at 50%, Captain. We've taken some hits, but we're holding steady." "Weapons are primed. The railguns are fully charged and the fusion cannons are ready," another officer reported. Sarah looked at Colonel James Grant, her trusted companion and leader of the ground forces. His jaw was set in grim determination. "This is it, James. If we fail here, it's over." Grant's voice was quiet, but the edge of steel was clear. "If we fail, we go down fighting, but we won't fail." With a sharp nod, Sarah gave the command. "Engage!" The Ghost surged forward, breaking through the enemy's defenses with a blast of energy that sent shockwaves through the Dominion's fleet. Railguns tore through the darkness, slamming into enemy ships with deadly precision. Plasma bursts streaked through the void, carving a path toward the eternity. But as they drew closer, something shifted. The Dominion's secret weapon, the Eternity, the Dominion flagship, had begun to glow with an eerie, unnatural light. Sarah's heart skipped a beat as she realized what was happening. The Dominion was preparing to unleash their secret weapon. She had heard rumors, whispers of a new kind of weapon that the Dominion had been developing in the deepest reaches of space. "They're deploying it!" Sarah shouted, her voice filled with urgency. Before she could react, a massive surge of energy erupted from the eternity, and suddenly, the battlefield was bathed in an otherworldly light. The shockwave slammed into the Ghost, sending the ship spiraling out of control. Systems flickered. The shields flickered and failed, leaving the ship exposed. "Captain, the ship's systems are failing. We've lost power to the main engines," a voice cried out. "Hold steady," Sarah snapped. She gritted her teeth, refusing to let the Dominion get the better of her now. The Ghost lurched, its hull groaning under the strain. They had to act, now. Sarah quickly assessed their position. They were close. They had one chance to land a decisive blow. A desperate decision. A cold sweat ran down Sarah's back as she weighed the options before her. They had been dealt a crushing blow, but they weren't out yet. If they didn't stop the eternity now, the entire fleet would fall, and so she made the call. "We're boarding the eternity." Grant's eyes widened in shock. "What? You're out of your mind. That ship's an impenetrable fortress." "I know, but we can't afford to waste time," Sarah said, her voice steely. "We fight or we die." The crew exchanged uncertain glances, but there was no hesitation in their actions. It was their only chance. With a hardened resolve, Sarah ordered the team to prepare for boarding. The Ghost's docking bay opened, and a team of elite soldiers, armed to the teeth, prepared to make their assault. They had one objective: take down the Eternity's core and stop its new weapon from annihilating their fleet. The final confrontation. The boarding operation was swift and brutal. As the team stormed the Eternity, they encountered heavy resistance. Dominion soldiers, led by Vishkar himself, had barricaded themselves around the core, ready to make a final stand. Sarah and her team fought through the corridors, guns blazing, their hearts racing. Every step they took was a step closer to victory, or certain death. "We're almost there," Grant yelled, leading the charge. "Keep moving." With every blast, with every step, they got closer to the Dominion's heart. Sarah's breath came in ragged gasps. She knew that time was running out. The weapon, if unleashed, could destroy everything they had fought for. As they reached the core room, Sarah locked eyes with Vishkar. His face was a mask of rage and fear. "You think you can stop the Dominion?" he spat. "We are invincible. You cannot win." "We already have," Sarah said coldly. With a final surge, her team breached the core, taking down the last of the Dominion soldiers guarding it. The ship trembled as the self-destruct sequence was initiated. The turning point. The Eternity began to implode, its energy core destabilizing as Sarah and her team made their retreat. The ship rocked violently, its powerful weaponry now useless. In the distance, the Dominion fleet was falling apart, its command structure shattered. The victory was theirs. What's next? Can Sarah and humanity capitalize on their victory and fully dismantle the Dominion, or is there another unexpected threat waiting for them? What will Sarah sacrifice to ensure the future of humanity remains bright? Chapter 6 marks a climactic turning point in the story, with humanity fighting its greatest battle yet. The stakes have never been higher, and the decisions made here will shape the fate of the galaxy. But in the face of overwhelming odds, Sarah Matthews proves that defiance, unity, and resilience will be the force that changes the course of history. The war was over. The smoke of battle still lingered across the cosmos, but the tides had finally turned in humanity's favor. The once mighty Dominion, now shattered and retreating into the dark corners of space, could no longer claim dominance over Earth or its people. Humanity had fought back and emerged victorious, but at what cost? Sarah Matthews stood on the balcony of the Earth Defense Command, looking out over a world that was forever changed. Below her, the remnants of the old cities were being rebuilt, but their scars, the memory of what had been lost, would never fade. The Dominion's invasion had left deep marks on humanity's collective soul. People had been enslaved, their homes and dreams trampled under the weight of an alien empire that thought they could never be defeated. But now, humanity had proven them wrong. Yet victory did not come without its toll. Sarah's gaze drifted toward the horizon as she remembered the battles, the lives lost, the sacrifices made. The price of freedom had been steep. The cost of victory. Colonel Grant approached quietly, his boots echoing on the metallic floor. He paused beside Sarah, following her gaze. For a long moment, neither spoke. The weight of the silence was heavier than any of the battles they had fought. "It's over, isn't it?" Grant finally asked, his voice low, a hint of weariness threading through his words. Sarah nodded, her expression solemn. "For now, yes. The Dominion's forces are scattered. The war is over." "But it feels like something's missing," Grant continued, his eyes fixed on the endless horizon. "We won, but I don't know. Something's just not right." Sarah didn't answer immediately. She wasn't sure how to explain what was on her mind. Yes, they had won. But at what cost? The Dominion's war machine had been obliterated, but in its wake, what had been left? Was the price of their victory truly worth it? "We did what we had to do," Sarah said, her voice steady but heavy. "But we can't forget who we were before all of this, before the war. We can't lose ourselves in the process of rebuilding. We can't let the fight define us. Not now, not after everything we've been through." Grant didn't respond. He only nodded, understanding the depth of her words. Humanity had endured countless hardships during the war. Millions of lives had been lost, cities had been burned, families had been torn apart, but they had fought, and they had survived. And now, they had a chance to rebuild the future of humanity. As the days passed, Sarah found herself overwhelmed with the weight of her responsibility. She had led humanity's charge into battle, but now she faced the harder question: what next? The rebellion had transformed into a united front, a single force, pushing for peace and reconstruction. The galaxy, though scarred by war, was now witnessing the rise of a new era, an era where humanity would stand tall among the stars. The Ghost, the ancient warship that had been their salvation, now rested silently in orbit, a reminder of the past and the future. She stood in the war room, facing a map of the galaxy. The Dominion had fractured, but their influence remained across several star systems. It was not just about rebuilding Earth anymore. Humanity had become a beacon for the oppressed across the galaxy. It was their responsibility to ensure that the peace they had won would last. What now? Sarah muttered under her breath, her finger tracing a path across the stars on the map. How do we ensure that the mistakes of the past are never repeated? Suddenly, a voice broke her concentration. It was Lena O'Donnell, the brilliant hacker and strategist who had been an integral part of the rebellion. "Captain, you need to see this," Lena said urgently. Sarah turned, her brows furrowed. "What is it?" Lena projected a hologram into the air, and Sarah's eyes widened as she saw the news. The Dominion's remnants had made contact with multiple alien species, some of whom had once been their allies. The Dominion wasn't gone. It had simply gone underground. There were still factions loyal to the old regime, still conspiracies brewing in the shadows. "They're trying to rebuild," Lena said grimly. "They're not done yet. The remnants of the Dominion are rallying with some of the species they enslaved, and they're planning to strike again." A new threat looms. As the news sank in, Sarah felt a cold chill run through her. The war with the Dominion was far from over. Humanity had fought with everything they had, but now they were facing a new kind of war, one of diplomacy, strategy, and alliances. "We can't let them come back. Not after everything we've lost," Sarah said, her voice cold and determined. She turned to Grant. "We need to strike now, while they're still weak." Grant met her gaze, his eyes filled with concern. "Sarah, we need to be careful. The galaxy is not the same as it was. There are factions who will want to see humanity fall, not rise. We can't fight every battle." "But we can't wait either," Sarah responded. "We don't have the luxury of waiting for them to regroup. We need to end this now. We need to show the galaxy that humanity won't just survive, we'll thrive." The decision was clear. Humanity had won the battle, but the war was not over. It had transformed into something more insidious, a battle for influence, power, and unity in the stars. Sarah knew it wouldn't be easy, but she also knew they had no choice. The fight for peace would continue. The legacy of humanity. The days turned into weeks, and weeks into months. The newly formed Human Federation began to take shape, offering protection to worlds that had suffered under Dominion rule. The Ghost and its crew were hailed as heroes, and the legacy of their victory spread across the galaxy. But even as humanity built a new future, Sarah couldn't help but reflect on the cost of their victory. Had they lost their humanity in the process? The lines between peace and war had blurred, and now they were fighting a battle of diplomacy, alliances, and fragile trust. Sarah looked back at the faces of those she had lost. Had their sacrifices been worth it? "I will carry this burden," she whispered to herself. "I will make sure their sacrifices were not in vain." Chapter 7 concludes the journey with the reflection that the fight for humanity's future is far from over. Even though Earth has won its freedom, there are still new threats on the horizon. Sarah Matthews and the Human Federation will need to face these challenges head-on, but the true battle may be fought within themselves to preserve their humanity while striving for peace. The future is unwritten, and the fight for a better world has only just begun. I hope you enjoyed today's story and that it left you inspired and excited for what's next. Your feedback means the world to me, so please don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Every like, comment, and subscription helps this channel grow, and it motivates me to keep working hard to bring you more captivating sci-fi adventures. Your support is what makes this all possible, and I can't wait to share more with you. Until next time, stay tuned for more incredible stories. Thank you for your continued support.